Let's go, baby.
Let's fucking go. It is the Survivor Michigan Wolverine Wars finale podcast. We're doing interviews. It's fun. It's fresh. It's new. Coming off the back of not only a great season, but also the attention that Claire has brought to Survivor Michigan. Welcome to the podcast, and we have Dale with us today. I'm so fucking excited. Dale, are you?
I am pumped to be here. I've been a loyal listener all season.
Wow.
I went from like 0 to 100, not very involved in the college Survivor community other than Michigan Survivor. And now I'm like listening to every podcast out there, and you're certainly iconic. So the fact I'm sitting here pretty much feel like I'm already a superstar. So I'm pumped.
Okay. I'm so glad that I could make you feel that way. I'm fucking so excited to talk to you because I think, well, I've never gotten to actually talk to a winner of Survivor Michigan before, let alone one of, I would say, the most dominant Survivor Michigan winners of all time. Let's mark that down. No votes cast against you. Voted correctly every single time at Tribal Council. It's one for the history books, folks. I mean, how does that make you feel having played a kind of a perfect game of Survivor minus, what, 2 or 3 jury votes, right?
Yeah, definitely felt it in the game as well. I actually think the edit was spectacular from Ian and the team to like make it look and feel very much so anyone's game to lose. But at least my perspective while I was there certainly felt like video went out, but
oh, if it's me, we got some storms in Astoria, but you just keep talking.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was, I think, like, I kind of knew once Shannon took it, I was like, all right, here it goes, Dale for the win. But what a ride to get there. And I think, honestly, more impressive than I would say a lot of not only like college Survivor wins, but just like more impressive than I think what people gave you credit for in the comments and YouTube. YouTube thinks it was rigged. How do you feel about that? Do you think that Cooper rigged this season for you?
No, I mean, YouTube, like, obviously there's a difference between what you see in the edit. So I don't blame anyone in YouTube for like their comments and whatnot. I think one very different thing that I've realized between the actual show of Survivor and college Survivor is the show of like CBS's Survivor is mostly told through like group conversations and then like confessionals sprinkled in between, at least in my perspective. Whereas like college Survivor, at least Michigan Survivor, is primarily told all through confessionals. And then you only get very small tidbits of like the gameplay that's actually happening with your conversations with people during the game. So there is hours and hours, and I'm not even like joking, like 40 hours a week. I was meeting with people, talking to people, building relationships, hanging out with them. They don't really show that in the edit, right? Like you're told the story through confessionals. And like, I hate to say it, especially for many of the fan favorites who I love dearly, but like being a good confessionalist does not make you a good Survivor player.
Wow.
So like, that's just like my opinion in the game. And that's not directed towards anyone, mostly Jackson, but nonetheless.
So, yeah, directed at Jackson specifically and only. Well, I mean, I think that's totally true. And we see it a lot in the reverse where people get voted out because they're not trying hard enough. But it is really hard to convey if the person isn't targeted for it, how somebody is talking to a ton of people and it's working out for them because it almost like, because it creates no problems and only creates benefits, it's not kind of conflict that you'd put in the show. I actually think it's a really interesting observation. I don't think people think about it enough in terms of like gameplay. They just think about like, oh, well, this person likes this person.
Right.
And it kind of boils down to how much time and effort you put into your relationship. So I want to ask the very first question of how did you get involved with Survivor Michigan?
Very, very luckily. So I was at Michigan from 2017 to 2019. So I guess doing the math, I was there for the first few seasons as well. Just had never heard of it. I think you actually see this in a confessional when I don't know any of the colleges at Michigan. Like I literally didn't leave the business school. Like it's a 2-year program. It's fairly intensive, but you only have classes in one building. You don't have any other buildings. It's a building for graduate business school students, and then everyone lives near the building as well. So you only walk about like a 5-minute walk to there. So there's not many reasons to go outside of the business school. So with that being said, I probably didn't see all of the flyers that students were posting in the dorms and like on the bulletin boards and various different like, facilities and whatnot. So I just happened to be taking a piss one day and I looked up above the urinal and there was this flyer for Survivor Michigan season 4. I'm like, what the hell is this? So I like took a picture of it, kind of forgot about it. And then I actually was on a ski trip out to Jackson Hole over winter break. And my buddy was like, yo, did you ever apply to that Survivor Michigan thing? Because he's a big fan. I told him about it. And I was like, oh shit, no, I didn't. Let me go look at look at this picture of the flyer I took. And the deadline was actually that night. And we had a themed barn dance. So I was actually dressed up as Danger Dale. I'm like, fuck, I gotta email these people. So I email Survivor Michigan. I'm like, I'm sorry, this is the deadline. I'd love to still join, whatever. I don't even know where your application is. Can I join? And then next morning, Austin Pace messaging me. He's like, hey, can you interview today? Like, wow. You're already late, kind of. We're already conducting interviews. So maybe I actually missed the deadline. I don't know. But I fell asleep in the Danger Dale costume. So I woke up, went straight to my Survivor Michigan interview as Danger Dale and just like lit it up. And I'm sure that's like partially the reason I was cast. But yeah, that's the behind the scenes of how I found out at Survivor Michigan.
Falling asleep in the costume is so funny. I can't even read my own handwriting. I don't know what that says, so we'll move on. So like, just talk to me about, are you a big Survivor fan? Like, okay, compared to Jackson and Matt, who are already in competition for the biggest Survivor fan, are you a bigger Survivor fan than them? Can they have that? You win the title and they can just have that crown. What do you think about Survivor in general?
No, they could certainly have that crown. They could take that one. I'm definitely a Survivor fan, so obviously everyone knows I'm a bit older than a lot of the people on the cast. So when Survivor first aired, I was actually around the age where you could start slightly understanding Survivor, right? I think it aired in 2000 or 2001. I was like 11 at the time. So I started watching pretty much from season 1. I actually missed season 1. I've never went back and watched it. I probably should go do it, but I hate watching something where I know the ending. So I like already knew who
oh my gosh.
So I never had watched it, but I started like season 2 pretty much from like the actual air date and have watched every season since, but have never went back and rewatched the season. I couldn't like name you names of seasons. I hear like, oh, did you like Kagian and did you like Heroes and HHA or whatever I don't know. But like I couldn't tell you. I couldn't like if you reminded me who have won the season, I'd probably remember, but I'm not that big. Like I love the show, don't get me wrong, but I'm not like studying Survivor knowledge on my free time.
Yeah. And I think that at the very least, the enthusiasm for Survivor always comes across. Like, again, you, Jackson, Matt, and everybody who is a fan is always so invested in what's going on. And it just makes for like great TV, great YouTube.
Oh, it's TV. It's TV for sure.
It's TV. Okay, I want to know if you're still friends with anybody from season 4. Like, I don't know if maybe you and Nate were able to become friends in the first place, seeing as how angry, how much he just like didn't like you. But I don't know. Do you still talk to anybody from season 4?
Yeah, so me and Nate actually pretty much catch up on the weekends every other weekend. We have a FaceTime. No, I actually watching it back. I had no clue like Nate's hatred for me. Like
you're old.
I knew I wasn't like as close with him. Like you get that vibe, but I didn't know I was like literally hate it, to a certain extent. But I mean, it's an interesting question because I'm 31 and I live in Chicago, and I think the majority of the cast either just graduated or was like graduated last year and lives on like a different coast or whatnot. Yeah. So like, am I hanging out with people on the weekends? No, but I definitely keep up with a lot of people. I would say me, Matthew, Jackson, and Shannon, or for me, Matthew, Jackson, and Shannon are by far probably the people I keep up with the most.
Yeah.
But I certainly text Ivy a ton and we'll like just drop some jokes, or if we like see a meme, we'll share it with each other. And that I try to be that way with like everyone. Even in fact, I had an hour conversation with Tom about like a month ago. He's like, hey, can I give you a call? I'm like, sure. And then it turned into an hour-long conversation talking about like engineering careers and whatnot. So it was, yeah. So that's like, who knows? Everyone I try to stay in touch with.
And Okay, the very first question off the bat, I feel like you. So I'm 26 now, right? I can't imagine hanging out with 18-year-olds and trying to be like, "Hey, I'm cool. You shouldn't vote me out." How was it for you, sort of walking into the room and seeing everybody and being like, "Oh no, I'm old." How did that hit you?
Yeah, I mean, well, it didn't really hit me that bad, to say the
Yeah.
least. So I have a huge family, like a ton of first cousins on my dad's side. I have nearly 40
Mm.
first cousins, and I'm kind of like right in between. So I have a ton of older cousins and I have a ton of younger cousins, and I try to like keep in touch with all of them. We have huge family reunions. In fact, 4th of July is our family reunion every year. So just saw all of them a few days ago. So they kind of keep me young and keep me in touch, and then the older ones kind of ground me a little bit. So I didn't feel like any more uncomfortable than I would with my family members. I would say like the thing I was most cognizant of is like, is this going to be a detriment to my game? Like, I feel like I could fit in, but do other people, will they receive this energy? So
Right.
I'm pretty like a young buck at heart, try to keep it fun and enjoyable. So I think that I kind of actually did fit right in. And I think you see that with a lot of the relationships I built.
I young at heart. That would have been a good name for this season, right? Like the Survivor Michigan Young at Heart. But I was wondering how your wife felt about watching you play all of this and go through the whole experience, because I can only imagine what it's like to watch somebody you care about go through my boyfriend's actually played orcs and I turned into a crazy person. I can only imagine what that was like for your poor wife to watch you have your back up against the wall, especially in this late merge, and really just try to come out with the win. How was that for you guys?
Yeah, I was gonna say like pre-merge, I don't think it impacted her a whole ton, but like once we hit merge, she definitely probably thought I was losing my mind. It was pretty nuts. Like we watch a ton of shitty TV. Like we watch Bachelor, we watch all of the MTV shows, we watch pretty much like anything that's trashy TV on Netflix. Like we watch it also. Like we have our time on the couch and we'll watch a few episodes and then she'll go to bed. She'll be like, "Hey babe, I'm going to bed. It's midnight." I'm like, "All right, great. Love you." Give her a kiss. And I'm like, "I'm going to go look for an idol." So I like my idol searching hours are like midnight to 3-4 in the morning. And then I get back all exhausted. I'd like crawl into bed with her, like smelling like bushes and shit. And she's like, what are you doing? So that like the timing of their, like having like 18-year-old kids come in and out of my like apartment was kind of awkward for her. She'd be like, "All right, hi, would you guys like dinner? I just cooked up some nice soup." And I'm like, "Hey, give her some soup. She loves soup." So that was a little awkward for her. And then like at the very end, especially like Final Four, and I'm sure all of the players like have experienced this through org, but like, you legit start losing sleep. Like you can't think, like you're constantly running things over like through your head, and like there was like a good week to 2 weeks at the end there where I was like, I just couldn't sleep. And she like was so concerned for me. She's like, "Babe, you need to quit this game. Like, I don't like you see me like this." I'm like, "No, I gotta win it. Swag Dad's gotta win it." So like, she was a little concerned there at the end. I was like sleeping on the ground trying to fall asleep. It was pretty weird, but all worth it at the end. And she was really happy for me. So.
Yes. And Matthew is here to say that he forgot to talk Bachelor with Dale this season.
Dude, Lion, hit me up, bro. Come on.
Well, it's kind of, to me, it sounds like, when some people like can see Tetris in their brain if they play too long. That's what Survivor kind of feels like, is if you think about it too much, your brain just won't stop playing even when you're lying down and trying to go to bed.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe Matthew discussed this in his session with you, but I'm like still thinking about it. I'm hoping like once I'm through these last few podcasts, like I kind of like wrap it up in my brain, but I still have Survivor dreams. I'm like, man, and I won the fucking game. I can't imagine if I didn't win the game, what would be going through my head. But I'm still thinking like, oh, what if I would have done this week? Would have that turned out differently? It's nuts.
Yeah, and my cure for that, because I have that sometimes of like, oh, if we just played the idol on the right person, right, and I just go, you still would have lost. Just tell yourself you still would have lost and move on.
Right.
At least for you have the win. So because someone like Matthew is like, oh, he still would have lost. So what I want to know from you is like, in the early game, in the early moments, like I know Jackson had talked about how he didn't rock the boat at all. He just went with whatever. He goes with the name Tokidoki, whatever floats your guys' boat, I'll go with. What was your strategy in this early pre-merge? Was it, anybody but me? Was it just going along with the flow? What was that like for you on Tokidoki?
Yeah, I mean, I think my early strategy went out the window day one. So I came in thinking like downplay yourself as a threat, like just be like you said, kind of go with the flow, just be in the background. And then we get to the first challenge, and it's that pickle challenge, right? And they're like, we all get in, and Cooper explains the challenge, and they don't show this in the edit, but they're like, okay, we'll give you a few minutes to strategize, right? So you get a few minutes to strategize. We all go in a little circle, and he explains that there's 2 idle clues, like out there that you could go run and get, right? One for El Norte and one for Tokidoki.
Yeah.
And if you get the other tribe's clue, like you can't read it, but you could still give it to them. So like we're all discussing, like, should we go run and get the clue? Like, what should we do? I'm like, guys, why aren't we getting both clues? And they're like, what? I'm like, he said we could get both. Like, we can't read it, but then we could control who we could give it to. So we could wait to see who's on the bottom, give it to them. Maybe they'll find the idol, and like then they're going to build like allegiance to us. And people are like, oh shit, this guy's playing. I'm like explaining. I was like, we have to send our 2 fastest people to go get the clue. So me and Jackson ran out to get it. I made sure I was the one to grab Tokidoki in case the slitherly little snake tried to pocket it for himself. So I got Tokidoki knowing I would share it. I told him to go get the El Norte one. And then it comes to like, all right, well, how are we going to do the pickle challenge? And I came up with the idea to do the handoff and like kind of scheme that whole thing. So it was really exciting in the moment. But as soon as I like finished that challenge, I was like, holy shit, dude. I couldn't help myself. I was like, you just gamed the hell out of that challenge and out of those like clues and whatnot. Like you're clearly, people are going to be talking in their confessionals. Like this guy came right out the bat. So
I sent her a little too hard. I mean, I feel like sometimes you get into a challenge and you can see that nobody else knows what's going on. And you're like, fine, I will be the one who knows what's going on. And then it just kind of goes from there. But I think it's also sometimes a trust building moment where people see you, I think, not only as the older person in the group, but they also see you as the more knowledgeable and maybe even wiser person. So they want to listen to you. And I feel like that maybe has a little bit of the benefit. If you were just like 18 years old and bossing everyone around, I don't know that they would have felt as secure with you on their side.
Fair enough.
And so this is I phrase it so well in my notes. A lot of your game was based in being the relationship confidant, the person that everybody trusted and cared about and wanted to have with them. And you felt like you were their number 1, number 2. I can't read my own handwriting. Never mind. Okay. What were the risks of that? Like, especially in this pre-merge, I'm wondering who you were talking to. Did you ever think that people were saying, oh, I met with Dale. We all met with Dale. Sounds like he's talking to a lot of people. Or was it actually a lot of smooth sailing for you in this early merge with your relationship building?
That's a good question. I don't remember how much one-on-one conversations I was having pre-merge. I know, like, I was certainly having them. But I, especially like week 1 and week 2, tried to keep everything to a group. I mean, other than like introductory meetings, and you could like other people were having one-on-one conversations too. So it was very clear that like they couldn't just point at you gaming too hard. But I definitely always tried to like, I think it took 3 weeks to even get a group chat going, but
oh my God,
at some point, like trying to always meet as a group and like inviting, like, hey, why don't we have group meetings when we were even in our one-on-one conversations? But I think one thing that doesn't get like portrayed as well in the season is no one knew the extent of any of my relationships in the game.
Yeah.
Like players actually didn't know me and Jackson were super tight. I mean, they knew we were close and they like assumed that we had like some sort of alliance going on, but no one really knew I was that tight. Like I think Matthew certainly thought I was closer with him. Shannon definitely thought I was closer with her. I mean, and it turns out I probably was. I ended up getting rid of him first, right? But and vice versa. Jackson had no clue what I was doing with Jackson or with Matthew and Shannon. So I think I did a really good job of downplaying all of my relationships in my one-on-one conversations with each player, which probably helped mitigate the opportunity for them to like get together and say like, hey, why are you working with them? I also like tried my best to pit them against each other. Mm-hmm. So they like didn't have a reason to want to like go to the other person because they felt like there was maybe an insecurity there. So
sure. Yeah. I also think that you have this sort of added bonus as it gets later into the game of Tokidoki just sticking together, where it's almost kind of like Big Brother in a weird way, where there's like a huge alliance in the center of the house or the game, and everybody is sort of feeling connected to one person, but realistically they're in this group for safety, and then as things dissipate, the pecking order becomes very, very clear. That's kind of what happens with Tokidoki, but it is admirable, and everybody on Big Brother is praised. Well, they hate him, but for making these like really smart big groups. And I feel like I'm wondering how much you thought about like the idea of keeping Tokidoki together, especially considering you do vote out Eliza. But was that on your mind of like, let's just keep the big group together?
Yes. Like pre-merge, certainly. Like, why not? We worked hard for these numbers. We worked hard for winning these challenges. Like, we might as well go into the merge with numbers. Once I found the second idol, this was pre-Jack vote out, so I found it like, 2 days before Jack voted. Yeah. My whole strategy changed. My game narrowed from getting from final 3 to final 2 to getting to final 6.
Yeah,
like all I cared about was getting to final 6, because then I knew I was guaranteed final 4, and then it's one challenge away from getting final 3. So from other players' perspectives, like I don't quite understand the whole like Tokidoki strong thing. I guess each one of them had a path to victory if they had played it right. But for me, my strategy was like, how do I get from 10 to 6? I need 4 votes. And like conveniently, there was 4 El Nortes. I always call them the Nortes. But so I had to get rid of 4 people to get to 6. So like, it was just an obvious, clear path to get to 4. And I knew it would never stay. It would never be 4 in a row, because Shannon wanted to get rid of Jackson. Matthew wanted to make a play on Jackson. Jackson wanted to make a play on Matthew or Shannon. So like they were all plotting against each other. I conveniently was in the middle, but I was like, as many votes as I could extend this El Norte, like let's just get rid of the easy number. That gets me one more closer to 6. And then I could hopefully schmooze or do something without playing an idol that gets to 6. So yeah, it certainly wanted to stay Tokidoki strong once we hit the merge and I found that second idol.
So something that was fascinating that I learned in my conversation with Jackson and with Matthew as well is the sort of evolving like relationship wheel with Katie, where you guys vote out Camilla and you guys, okay, Camilla's gone. That's great. And then it went from like Jackson had put in some work with Katie. Katie pivots away from Matthew to you. And like by the time she's voted out, like she trusts you the most. And it's a very weird situation. I'm wondering if you can talk to me a little bit more just about your relationship with Katie and how you felt her allegiances like pivoted after being saved from Camila and then being saved with Eliza going home.
Yeah. Katie was probably one of my favorite players of like having to vote out and like felt really, really bad about it.
Yeah.
I certainly would have loved to like play deep into the game, if not go to the end with her. She was just so much fun. And I definitely got the sense that she trusted me more than Jackson. And I didn't even really think she trusted Matthew much, because she seemed to be gravitating towards me and Jackson versus Eliza and Matthew. So I probably overlooked that relationship. But between me and Jackson, I just felt, here's the thing about Jackson, like everyone kind of like just didn't really get a good vibe of him in the game because of how like game bot he was. So those conversations came up with like all of my relationships. So when I was talking to Shannon, she's like, I'm so frustrated with Jackson. I know he's in our alliance, but all he ever does is this. And like, it almost seems like he's just speaking down to me and doesn't like respect my opinion. And that not only came from Shannon, but that also came like slightly from other players in the game. And when that came up with Katie, I would always use that. I'd be like, yeah, fuck that guy. What a terrible guy. Because not only did it help my game, but it also downplayed the relationship I had with Jackson, which again is why I think people didn't think him and I were so close. So I got the sense that she was closest with me. I think the vote out of Katie is actually an interesting one, because Jackson and I both really liked her, thought that she would be a number for us if we needed her. I wasn't as worried about the number again, because my gameplay was just get to 6, whereas Jackson doesn't have 2 idols, right? So he's playing a completely different game. But during week 9, I think the week that we voted her out, or during it started week 10 and then got to week 9, she came up to me with this strategy. I mean, she's like, Dale, I got a great strategy. What do you think about this? I'm like, let's hear it. What is it? She's like, we need to get on the bottom. How do we get on the bottom so everyone wants to vote us off? Let's do something like chaotic. Let's blow up this game and get on the bottom so everyone hates us. I'm like, all right, I'm all ears. I'm not going to shoot down an idea. Like, tell me more. It's like, if we get on the bottom, then everyone's going to hate us. Then if we make it to the final 2 or 3, we're going to have the underdog story. So then we're going to win at final jury. I'm like, that sounds great, but you got to get to final jury. So I was like, I'm going to stay on this top position over here. Like, you go with that strategy. then she like, I had this whiteboard, right? And I always like listed people off like 9876543, and I'd like show them, hey, here's the order, here's who we vote next. When I tried to do my whiteboard exercise with Katie, it became this fucking like serial killer map, trying to like find a serial. Like we had dots connecting over here, like 1.79, 2.4 positions, and sloop-de-loops and shit. I'm like, I can't. Like this is unpredictable. So like Jackson and I had actually met, and I was like, I think Katie's a number, but she is extremely unpredictable in her like gameplay, and like we're very strategic. I was like, I'd rather have someone do that I know is against me in Megan than someone who I think is with me and does something fucking crazy. Because that's how you could plan for the people against you. You can't really plan for the people who's with you and then turn on you. So it was like, let's maybe just cut out this random variable that we don't know what it is. And then what's also not shown here is when we had met with Shannon and Ivy, the deal was if we get rid of Megan, it would show faith and loyalty to them. Or sorry, got rid of Katie, then they would get rid of Megan next to prove their faith and loyalty to me. And as I just said, my strategy is get to final 6 and call it a day. And that at that point, we're final 9. So I just got a 2-for-1 package. And I'm like sitting doing like a leprechaun dance in my room because I'm like, if they're being honest here and they're going to get rid of Megan next, I just put in my work for next week. And now I'm at 7. I got to survive 1 vote at 7 and I'm at 6. So I was like willing to get rid of Katie that week, no problem, as long as it got me to 7 with 2 idols in my pocket.
And it's also really, I think what you say about Katie and sort of her unpredictability is kind of what ends up, is what Ivy does to Shannon in a weird way as well, of like, I'm with you, but I'm going to behave in a way that will not make your game better. And you just kind of go, well, what the hell? Wait, like, you don't speak for me. But it's funny. What Katie's kind of talking about is like the intentional Matt Singh idea of like, let's lose every challenge and then, you know, they'll just target each other before they target us. But it's like a terrible, like, I don't think you can really do it in the post-merge. I think it's like it has to be a pre-merge setup for a post-merge.
And it wasn't like lose challenge. It was like, let's make people hate us and want to vote us out. And then figure out a way to dodge it and get out of it. Like that doesn't sound right.
Doesn't work. Survivor doesn't work. Survivor.
I didn't realize I was that boring now. I didn't realize I was that boring. You keep yawning on me. Jeez.
I'm just, I did not drink my normal 2 cups of coffee today. I only had 1. And so I just want to know about the Eliza vote, really. Like, when it boils down to it, it's a good move. You take out her idol, you create a real cemented alliance in Jackson, and I think in a lot of ways take out Matthew's a big ally, and then also destroy the relationship that could exist between Jack, Matthew, and Eliza. So I want to know what you thought you were maybe accomplishing when this vote was actually happening. And I remember Matthew was saying, was it this vote where he was talking about how they like had all these no, it was the Camilla and Katie vote, but like, what was going on in this vote for you from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, the accomplishment was fairly simple, right? Eliza was a huge threat. And then there had been, at this point in the game, there had been this perception that the bigger, like, alpha males, if you want to call us that, like, were the biggest threats in the game. Even though, like, Eliza was clearly a much bigger threat than us, but that was just kind of the reality that was taking shape. So me and Jackson were thinking, like, if we go to the merge, not only do you have us 3, but then you're going to have Jack. So now there's 4 like alpha males in the game. So like that's going to get Eliza down to 6. Not only that, but she has like close relationships and close ties, and she's found idols in her season. Like who knows what she has up her sleeve. It's very easily you could see her making it final 3. So the goal was to get rid of her at that point. But there's a lot of nuance to that move. I'm happy to share it, but to answer your question very quickly, that was the goal of it or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, let's dive deep down into it, because I think that I think it is the game-changing move of the season, because I think for a lot of ways, if it's played worse by you and Jackson, you guys go home soon after. And if it's played better by Eliza, she plays her idol and maybe Katie goes. But if she caught wind, I'm sure she would try and vote out you or Jackson if she knew that it was you guys that it was coming from. So I'm dying to know all the nitty-gritty of how you feel about the Eliza vote.
Yeah. So for Jackson, I actually thought it was it was still a good move, but less advantageous to him than it was to me. Also at this point in the game, somehow me, Matthew, and Jack had been deemed the biggest threats.
Right.
Like Jackson was a threat, but he like kind of fell beneath that. There was like a tier 1 and then a tier 2. And you actually see Jackson reference this in his voting confessional. He goes, "You and I are playing the same game." They were playing like a bit like a tier 2 big threat game. They were kind of just floating as a threat, but underneath these like bigger shields.
Right.
So like for me, getting one of those like floating subcategory threats was a good move. For Jackson, it's like you could have maybe, once you get rid of these 3, still position maybe you're less of a threat than her. So I was a little concerned he actually wouldn't go forward with it. But conversations happened very early in the week after voting out Camilla that, hey, this is probably a good move for us, but what's going to happen if we break up Tokidoki? Because at that point, Tokidoki truly was like this massive, just like family or what have you, and very strong alliance and strong ties. Like, what are the ramifications of this vote? So we had it in the back of our mind. We're like, and this was very similar in both Jackson and mine game, is like, I fundamentally believe you do not make a move in Survivor until the last day or like the day before, especially in College Survivor, where you have like a week to 10 days sometimes in between tribal councils, depending on people's schedules. 10 days is that's one fourth of the actual CBS Survivor show. Like, you know how much like shit could change in 10 days between 2 tribal councils. So if you like come up with this plan and share it early in the week, it's like bound to get fucked up, and like people will like talk, and it's like the only way you make a move is the day before or the day of, and then that way there's not enough time for people to react to it. So we're like, all right, let's make our move the day of and see what we want to go forward with. So that's why we pull in Katie like 2 hours before tribal, and it was very intentional. Like Jackson, like I was like, Jackson, you go first, then call me in, say like, I don't know if I could get, like, we had talked about all this before.
Yes.
Like, maybe why don't we call Dale? So like, I knew I was coming to that meeting. In fact, I think I was like sitting in the parking lot for like an hour waiting for the call to come up to that room. So that was there. We also knew that like we didn't need Katie's vote, because like at this point in the game, and again, this is just feeling confident in your reads, but we knew for almost certainty that Matthew and Eliza were not flipping. Yeah. Like, just based on their gameplay, it didn't really make sense to take out me or Jackson at that point, especially so close to the merge. So we were fairly certain they weren't flipping. So in our eyes, they both were going to vote for Katie. And then we two, if we voted for Eliza, it would be 2 Katie, 2 Eliza. And then even if Katie voted for Jackson or I, it would be a 2-2-1. Then it would go to revote, and Jackson and I would own 2 of the 3 votes on a revote. So we're like, we don't necessarily need Katie, but why not get this relationship developed even stronger by, pulling her in. Yeah. So we go in, but we still didn't want to give like an exact name at the end of that discussion, because like if in the off chance Katie went back to Matthew and Eliza, she would be able to say like, hey, it's you, Eliza, or hey, it's you and Matthew. And if there was an idol in play, it would screw up the whole thing. So we actually left that meeting like, okay, we don't know. It's either Matthew or Eliza, but we're going to make a move. Let me and Jackson think about it and talk about it. We'll get back to you at Tribal and tell you who's at Tribal. So at this point, Katie doesn't actually, I think, know that it's going to be Eliza, or maybe like we left maybe Eliza, but maybe Matthew, but still didn't know. I had to go to like class or something. And then I ended up driving Matthew to Tribal. And really what like sealed the deal was this conversation in the car on the way to Tribal. I'm talking to Matthew, and now there's like a lot of rumors floating on about this like returnee alliance. And I just like, yo, I consider you my number 1 ally. Like, it's me and you to the end, madman. Like, I've put all of my faith and all of my chips and all my eggs into this basket. I'm not feeling that reciprocated. Like, I just need you to be honest with me right now. Like, what's going on with this returnee alliance? Like, you just be honest with me. And then I'm surprised Matthew hasn't shared this in his interviews, or maybe he remembers it differently. But he essentially tells me, he's like, okay, look, the 3 of us have been working together this whole game. We've had conversations essentially since day 1. Once we get to merge, we could. I don't think he like committed to 100%. He's like, we could definitely do the returning alliance and pull you in as a 4th. So it'd be like us 3 and you as 4 strong going into it. We could even pull Jackson in, but like, I'm thinking, all right, 3 returnees and me, that makes a ton of sense. Not really. And I couldn't believe how like honest he was being with me on this strong returning alliance. He goes, me and Eliza are closer than you think, because he had been downplaying the Eliza relationship this whole game.
Yeah.
But he was also pissed at Eliza because I think I told him, like, hey, Eliza brought up that you were talking to Jack. And he's like, oh no, that's what it is. Screw Eliza. Eliza's been talking to Jack too. And I've been talking to Jack. We've been all talking to Jack. So I kind of like caught him off because he got so mad at Eliza that he slipped up. It was like, we've all been working together. We've had this returning thing. So the four Tokidoki plan was to meet at Tribal Council 10 minutes early and just have a reconnect. We were on one floor of Mason Hall. We went to the second floor of Mason Hall, found an empty classroom, and we just got, hey guys, like, let's get together and just clear the air, make sure that there's nothing crazy going on. Because at the beginning of the week, I was overly honest with a lot of the players. I was like, Matthew, like, I have to tell Katie a name because I don't want her to put my vote on me, right? Like, don't put it on me if you have an idol. So who am I going to tell him? I was like, the most logical thing probably to say is like, oh, don't you want to get rid of a returnee? I'm not voting for a returnee, but that's probably what will come out in the conversation. So if Katie ever comes back to you and says, oh, he said returnee, that's just me trying to get the vote off of myself. I'm not coming for you. I was like, and if you want to throw my name out there and say, hey, you're a big threat, throw my name out there. I know you're good for it. So like I told the players at the beginning of the week that I was likely going to be floating their names out. So when it got back to them, they didn't think anything of it. So nonetheless, we got into that room, and I think you see there's a scene of me going like, no, I told to vote you yet. I told you. And that's me just kind of like, yeah, of course I shat talk you guys during this week, but that meant nothing. Are we all good? And we're like, we're all good. But we didn't want Katie to see us all walking down from tribal from like into tribal together. Yeah. Because it was like awkward 4 people walking us. It's like, okay, let's go one by one. Let's go one by one. So me and Jackson strategically made it sure we were the last 2 to go down. So Matthew goes first, or Eliza goes first. Then Matthew shortly follows. And then it's me and Jackson. I pull Jackson. I go, bro, I just had this conversation with Eliza or with Matthew in the car. He's been working with Eliza and Jack this whole game. The 3 of them had this returning thing. They want to pull me in post-merge. It's fucking Eliza. It's so clear now. He's like, is it Eliza? I go, it's Eliza. He goes, let's do it. So that's literally when we decided it was Eliza. It was that close to the final vote. We were like so excited. We're like, all right, how do we tell Katie? How do we tell Katie? I was like, I'll give her a nod. So we go down, and they always make sure that we line up before we enter the tribal council to like film us. So we're like lining up, and I made sure I lined up next to Katie. Yeah. And Matthew and Eliza kind of walking the thing, and I turn over to Katie. I go, it's Eliza. And she goes, Eliza. I go, Eliza. So that's when Katie learned it was Eliza and not Matthew. And then we walk into the room, and the rest is history. So that was very so interesting. Yeah.
Well, so first of all, that reminds me a lot of like the live games that people play where it's like a day or 2 long, where you just like whisper to somebody, you're like, it's this person now, it's changed, everything's changed. And like, it's just the chaos of it, but it's very intentional chaos for your guys. And again, this is why I think that College Survivor is even harder than regular Survivor in a lot of ways, but it's also a lot harder to make sure that something goes to plan, which is just a testament to, again, like I said, you voted for every single person that went home. So these are your plans that you wanted to happen. And therefore, like, it's way harder to make sure that happens every single time. And I think to Elisa's credit, I know she was busy, like someone was sick in her family or a friend of hers was sick. So she was like a little out of it. And that's kind of it with Survivor, right? The minute that you stop paying as much attention is the minute that somebody else is working harder than you and takes you out. Like, that's just kind of how it is. I everybody was furious at this moment, but I remember being like, damn, RIP Eliza, but good move. All right, good move. Right. Do you think that you earned the title of Challenge Beast because you slammed your head into a watermelon?
Duh. I mean, I think I earned my challenge title of Challenge Beast long before that in that snow challenge. Like first the pickle challenge, then the snow challenge, where I'm literally carrying our whole team on my back, hopping on 1 foot. Matthew couldn't even fucking wheelbarrow. He keeps falling, our big athlete Matthew. Then Jackson, you watch Jackson. He's supposed to be carrying someone, and he falls. So at the end of that challenge, I'm just like, all right, I am not carrying anyone until you guys do your part, because I know I won't screw it up. So if you watch when we finally get down to whatever legs it was, I like hang back with Shannon, and then they finally get over. I'm like, all right, Shannon, hop on. And I'm the last one to go hopping on 1 foot. So that's Challenge Beast there.
Oh,
but
my God.
Smashing a watermelon. That's why they call me the Swag Dad. Because your boy smashes everything, baby.
And is that a Survivor Michigan shirt too?
It is, yeah. Survivor Michigan. I wore it special for you guys.
Thank you so much. I love the hat is so funny. So let's talk about the Swag Dad origins. I also have to say, if anybody is a fan of a college Survivor season, my suggestion is always go back and watch the first like physical challenge, like the Steal the Bacon in Survivor Maryland, because there's so much subtext to it that nobody realizes until you watch it back, knowing everything that happened. So if you're ever bored and you want to watch a Survivor season again, that's my suggestion. But let's talk about the Swag Daddy. Where does Swag Dad come from?
Yeah, I don't know the exact origins. It was from high school and then had like progressed exponentially more in college when I kind of went through my fraternity days. But I think it was just like I was always like willing to be that guy that broke the ice with people and like go talk to the group of girls. Like even at high school, it's like, hey, look at the girls at the football game. Should we go talk to them? I'm like, I'll go do it. And I'll do something like stupid, take my shirt off or something, or I don't know, streak a broomball game. So yeah, there was just like so much swag dripping that people just started calling me the Swag Daddy.
Yeah, understandable.
You look so pleased. You look so pleased.
I'm just like, oh my god, like, can you? I would have probably loved to be like, oh yeah, I'm voting for Swag Dad. Like, I would have loved to write that down in a parchment to like try and vote you out. You know what I mean? That I think that would have been fucking hilarious. But I think voting for you to win just the same is a funny like bit. I want to know what your favorite like confessional look or confessional in general is, because you really brought the like you produced yourself. You know what I mean? Like it was next level, and I want to know what your favorite was.
Yeah, I think probably the Godfather was a new character to Survivor.
Yeah.
Like Danger Dale clearly had existed prior. I did my cast interview in Danger Dale. Couch Boy developed ironically just because I was like stranded at home without a wife and I was eating fast food, but that was like more of a development of my life. But Godfather like just kind of became this like character that I was feeling in the game. So watching it back, I just love the editing where Ian goes like crack, and he makes a little editing sound, and just like me not being able to smoke this cigar in my house, but like really wanting to like just puff it up for the camera. It's just like so goofy, but it's like also very relevant to the game because like Danger Jail has no relevance to the game, right? It's just like some goofy character. The Godfather kind of like overlays to what's actually going on, and I think that was really fun to rewatch and see in the show.
I also loved all the dancing, especially the dancing in the finale. I think was next level, and everybody else is crying and they're so upset, and you're just like, it's time to party. Let's like Alexa play whatever, like it. That was so fucking funny. What was the feeling? I just gotta know when you are not voted out at 4. Like let's get into the finale of it all. Like what was the feeling like?
Yeah, so there was like 3 really, really big celebratory like moments that I got extremely excited in the game, right? Like just overwhelmed and excited. And I think you see those dancing come out in each one of the plays. So the first was the Elisa, or not the Elisa vote, the Ivy vote when I saved 2 idols. And I was like able to like, now I guarantee myself Final 4. So there was like some celebrations there. I don't think they showed it because like 3 days after was my next celebration vote, because this was being filmed right around the time when like an idol nullifier was kind of introduced into the ethos of Survivor. Right. I don't know if it was like a year before or like live during that season. I forget what season nullifiers came a thing, but like it was relatively new. So I was convinced that like college students would see something shiny new on the actual show and be like, we got to put that in this game. That's so cool. Right. So I was like absolutely certain that there was a nullifier in this game. I was like, man, how shitty would it be to put in all this work, build all these relationships, find 2 idols, and then get nullified? So I was even asking production. I was like, if I play 2 idols on myself at 5, does my idol nullify a nullifier? So they're like, we don't know those rules. Let us look into it. So I was like trying to actually hold my 2 idols till 5 and just play them at 5 in case there was a nullifier. But right after the Ivy vote and shortly after I find out from Jackson that he has the advantage, that it was a steal vote. So then that was just like the huge celebration because that was Final 4. So I'm doing the everybody come on in and do the Congo. So that was a big celebration. And then Final 4 was great. That was my WWE one just because like no effect. Like I said, I love everyone in the game, but like I had known at that point that it was going to be me.
Yeah.
So that was more or less like I just celebrated winning Survivor Michigan.
Well, something I want to actually talk about, like you mentioned the Ivy vote of like, there's the moment where Jackson gives you the call, and I remember my conversation with Jackson. He had said he had waited to find out what was going on, and then he gives you the call sort of like right before it's going on. He's like, you need to hear this. Because it's very sort of complicated where like Ivy originally agrees, like we're not going to vote the four of us, but then immediately like won't vote Nate. So it's like it's either Shannon or Kat, and you don't want to piss off Shannon. So it just like obviously chaos ensues. You have to step away, and Jackson calls you. Did you figure that he was calling you to say, hey, Ivy's actually turning on you, or was that kind of a surprise to you?
Once I like asked people not to call me. So like once I got a call, I knew it wasn't good news. Like people aren't going to call me and say like, hey, it's still Kat, great news. So that like I knew picking up the phone, probably not, good for me. I had gone home that weekend full-heartedly believing it wasn't going to be Kat. So like, even though the Pinky Promise thing happened, prior to the Pinky Promise, once I lost in that challenge, I went out into the hallway, and Shannon actually hadn't left for broomball yet, her broomball game. So it was me, Shannon, and Ivy in the hallway. And I think Ivy mentioned this maybe in her KYTL podcast, or it had gotten brought it up loosely, but the three of us got together, and they were both pretty adamant that it had to be like a big player that week.
Right.
This was even before like Kat's name was thrown around. It's like, it has to be a big player. We've been talking all along that at 8 we were going to get Matthew or Jackson, but at 8 we didn't make the move. So now it has to be a big player at 7.
Yeah, and of course they really wanted to vote Matthew that moment anyway.
They did. Yeah, it should have been Matthew, and like Matthew winning that immunity, like I was so pissed off. I texted Jackson like coin flip boy, and that's not all I said. I'm like, you fucking idiot. It was supposed to be Matthew this week. Now it's probably going to be either me or you, because it was easy Matthew. Like, get rid of a big player. It's Matthew. So like him flipping a coin put him and myself in a really bad position. So they were like, okay, whoever loses the challenge, we'll make it dumb. So if it's Jackson that loses, we'll make it Jackson. If it's Matthew, we'll make it Matthew. Ivy later then tells Jackson, when she shares that it's going to be me, she goes, Dale said he was going to vote you out in the hallway. Ooh. And he doesn't. So I think Jackson, I think, discussed this as well, but he doesn't look too much into it. He thinks it's just bullshit. But after being gone for 4 days, I was like, if I don't come back and there's no other developments for a play against any one of the 3 big players, then the big play is against me.
Yeah.
So had I heard nothing, I 100% was playing an idol, because it was just like too obvious to me that the players wanted to make or Shannon and Ivy, which presumably would be Shannon, Ivy, and Kat, and Nate, which is 4, would make a big play against a big player. So not hearing my name coming back, I was playing idol 100%. Hearing my name actually gave me the confidence not to play the idol, because then I knew that, okay, if I would have just heard it from Jackson, that's not good news. But Shannon had called me the day after. So Jackson calls me at night. The next morning, Shannon calls me. She goes, hey, look, I feel terrible about this. Like I came out, and what else, like what's also not as clear in the edit, but it's actually discussed. The move was Shannon's move. So like Shannon came up with the move to get me out. She went to Ivy. It was like, it's got to be Dale this week. Yeah. And then Ivy got on board quickly. But then when Ivy kind of sunk Shannon's move by going to Jackson, Shannon's like, all right, I don't want anything to do with this move anymore. So she kind of retreated, and she called me. So I came up with this move. Like, I was targeting you. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm telling you right now. Like, so to me, it didn't really make sense for her to call me, tell me about the move that she just came, and then go back and then just not vote me out. Right. Unless she's just trying to do some like big mind fuck. So I'm like, the fact that Shannon told me about this move, not going to play it idle, which turned out to be the right play. Also, what's not shown that was like pivotal in this move is after the Eliza vote, there was actually this huge fabricated lie on what we were going to tell the rest of Tokidoki on how the Eliza vote went down. Sure. So right after the tribal, the 4 of us, me, Matthew, Jackson, and Katie, went to Insomnia Cookies and got some cookies, and we all like sat there and came up with this plan. And like Matthew seemed to be really on board with it, because he still wanted Tokidoki to remain strong going into the merge, so the numbers made sense. So he didn't want Tokidoki to fracture. So he's like, I'll go along with every lie that we came up with. So we were like, first we threw out like, why don't we say Katie just played an idol, and it was 4 on Katie, and Katie's 1 vote went to Eliza, and Katie idled out Eliza. We're like, okay, let's do that. I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because Katie would have played an idol the week before when it was just her and Camila. Like, there's no way she holds an idol there and then has one to play the next week. So we kept going through all these scenarios, and like the best solution we came up to was Eliza went to Matthew really wanting to make a move against me, and then Matthew came to me and said, Eliza's making a move against you. And then we told Katie, and we all just went after Eliza. And Eliza's the one that broke Tokidoki. So we got rid of the fracture in Tokidoki. We can remain strong again.
Right. We saved the family.
I call Shannon, and I tell Shannon this whole story that night, the night of Tribal. And I explained to her that, hey, it was Eliza that broke the family. Like, now we're good. I know that you were really close with Eliza, but I think we did ourselves a favor here. And then like I slept on it, and I woke up the next morning. I called Jackson, like, there's no goddamn way that fucking Matthew Israel keeps his mouth shut about this lie. Like, this guy, the first chance he gets is going to tell him, like, yeah, I actually voted for Katie. Those two are the ones that, like, whether it was that week or the following week.
It's such good ammo, too, to be like, they blindsided Eliza, and I'm just going along with it so they don't come after me. Like, it's such good ammo.
Or like Katie at that point, because she was starting to become like a little more unpredictable. Like, even she might slip up and say, hey, like, actually, Matthew didn't vote with us. So I was like, I need to call Shannon immediately and talk to her before this gets back to her that it was a big lie.
Yeah.
So the next morning I call her, and I think they kind of showed this scene a little bit, but they made it seem like I was just speaking in general terms about blindsiding Eliza, but it was actually about telling Shannon this lie. I said, I slept on it. I couldn't sleep all night. I was having the shakes. I'm like sweating over here. Like, I just can't physically lie to you. Like, lying to you just doesn't exist. Like, the bond that we've built, the line, it's just not in my gameplay. I'm not like a conniving little player. That's not how I live, blah, blah, blah. I was like, here's what really happened. Me and Jackson just decided to turn on Eliza. And like at that point forward, that kind of became like a strong bond between me and Shannon, because, and it was true. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think these aren't mutually exclusive. Like, we obviously had a tight bond, and I never really lied to her after the fact, but like, at that point forward, she didn't think I could lie to her ever because of like me not being able to keep a secret for less than 10 hours while I slept. So when she told me about the Ivy thing, or the vote that she came up with Ivy, she's like, look, you had your moment of insecurity in our relationships and kind of like tried to lie to me and fuck me over. Here was my moment of insecurity in our relationship. I'm coming clean to you now. We both have come clean. Let's like just take this moving forward. So that kind of is how that all shook out, and it gave me the confidence.
Well, and it's such a good example of like people. So I've seen this in Scotty Survivor as well at Carnegie Mellon, where people will go against each other, and then they'll say, you know what, it didn't work. It's actually in my best interest to work with you. Can we work together? And I think it is a really good sign of, it's a sign of a really good Survivor player when you can say, yes, we both have the same benefits going forward. We should work together. And I think I love that like you and Shannon didn't go after each other, because there is like the nightmare situation where like Eliza goes and then you guys are immediately at each other's throats and you're like, oh no, the season. Oh no, here it goes.
Of course.
What I also think that Ivy kind of screws this move up in a way, we've talked about it a lot, but I think because including Jackson means that you're not just willing to lose Jackson, right? You're going to keep him in the fold. And I think that's terrifying to Shannon. If we're going to lose Dale, we need to be ready to lose Jackson right after. And I think that it really spooked her in a way that kind of got her back to say, you know what, actually, I trust Dale more than I trust Ivy, all this good stuff. I want to ask, speaking of lies and idols, I heard that you lied and said that one of your idols only worked at 10 and 6.
I did. Yeah. So there was like a lot of idol craziness that I kind of conjured up. So I made a fake idol the very first day after I found my idol, but then I was going to go plant it and replace it so people would keep looking and someone would presumably find it. But then I kind of did the math. I was like, what advantage am I gaining by other than people or one person who finds that not suspecting me of the idol? And really what you're putting in play is that person now having information that they believe to be true, and now are going to play their game with this fact and they're true, or this fact that they think is true, and make stupid calculated decisions off of an idol that they believe to be true, which I need to make my decisions off of people not thinking an idol is in play. So I decided to pocket that idol. then going into going into final 6. Like earlier in the week, I wanted to bring 2 idols to 5. So there was 2 reasons for me doing it. I don't remember exactly, but I knew I was going to share the idol, and I wanted them to not suspect, why didn't you share this with me sooner? Like, why didn't you share this with me? You kept this. How much can you really trust like our secret? So I wanted to say, hey, I found the merge idol. I could have only played it. It actually said you could play it at 10 or 6. So I said, you could play it at 10 or 6. I didn't need to play it at 10 because I knew it was Jack. But then I felt like if I would have shared this, in week 9, 8, or 7, someone would have been like, oh, well, his idol expires at 6. So let's just get him out. So that's why I didn't want to share this with you sooner. So like, here's this idol. So building trust there. And then also making them think that I was going to play it for sure at 6 because it had to, and then be able to carry 2 idols over to 5. Yes. But then once I learned about the steal a vote was the advantage and not a nullifier, and vice versa, et cetera, it gave me a little more confidence. So,
what compelled you to go out so early and look for an idol? Like, what was it just you were so excited to be in the game? Like, what night 1? I mean, I also said it's like such a testament to College Survivor that you can not only find an idol, but scream like College Survivor, baby, and nobody will hear you and think that you have an idol. Like, absolutely perfect facet of College Survivor. What made you go out so late at night to look for that idol?
I think you hit it on the head. It's just the excitement of the game. Like, like you do the challenge, right? And then after the challenge, they brought everyone down to this like creepy, like stank ass basement, and we all had to like take casting photos in like this dark room with like a black tarp. It was really weird. And then like after that, we went and met. Yeah, those are the photos I used for the rites of passage. So I have them all. I'll post them to some sort of social media feed for everyone to see.
Oh yeah, put them on Discord, please.
But what was I gonna say? Yeah. So long story short, you do that, and then we got together as Tokidoki and met. So there was like this really, really big high in the challenge, and then kind of this like little bit of a lull in the game with these casting photos. But you're getting to know each other. So I was like, dude, the game has begun. Like I need to play. So it's like, what else do I have to do? I had no classes. I was doing shit. Like I literally dedicated myself to like building a business and trying to fucking play Survivor. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go look for an idol. So I went out there with the lantern, hopping around, just searching around. And like my strategy was just go look at stuff that like has significance on campus.
Yeah.
Like, I had never seen a College Survivor season prior to this. But like, I didn't think they would hide it in a random tree. Right.
Yeah.
Like, or like just built like take 10 steps in the middle of the quad and dig 15 feet. Like you're not gonna be digging with a shovel, right? So I was like, they're gonna have to hide it at like some sort of statue or some sort of like weird looking object, even if it's a tree, like a tree that's very clearly doesn't belong there. It has to be something unique. So I just went to North Campus and just started looking at any weird, either something weird or something of significance. I'm like, Wolverine looks kind of significant. So let's go over there. And sure enough, it was right along the edge there. So.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good way of like, we see some people start the game too early or play too strong. And I think it's a good way of manifesting your energy into something that isn't just like overplaying at day 1 with other people, able to see it and sense that you're playing a little too hard necessarily. Okay. So I'm just going to, these questions are like all over. Go ahead.
Hold on 1 second. It'll be 10 seconds.
Go ahead.
So someone's like fucking knocking at my window. Hold on.
Go ahead. I just want to say that, guys, Claire is on Big Brother right now. So if you're not already supporting Claire, who is the co-founder of Survivor Michigan, she's on Big Brother. She is doing well so far. It's only been 1 day, but we are all here to support her at Live Reality Games. And that's a good reminder to go rewatch Survivor Michigan season 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 in preparation for All Stars. That's my preach of the week. I know not everybody who likes Survivor likes Big Brother, but
what do you know? He came to visit. Boom!
Knocking at my window. Oy vey.
Let's try it again. He wanted to join the podcast.
Okay.
At your service.
Okay. Well, Deidre Dale, very nice to meet you. I'm so glad you're here. What do you want to talk about?
Oh, I mean, you tell me. I got
like these notes and everything. I could go on for like every single vote, different nuances, different gameplay. Is there anything you want to know, or you just want me what I want to talk about?
Let's talk about Jackson's vote out. Let's talk about you blindsiding, the contender, the one who could have took it all. So Jackson basically screws himself, I think, in this vote. Sorry, Jackson, by not utilizing Nate and instead trying to not let Shannon know what was going on. But there's a world where if Jackson steals someone's vote and then he and Nate vote together, that's 3 versus 3, and he can sort of idle whatever because Nate has immunity and Jackson would be safe. Okay, so all this being said, when did you guys decide it was time to blindside Jackson? And how did you sort of keep him complacent and not think about the idea that you guys were going to take him out instead?
Yeah, I think his oversight was just one, and I explained this in my vote out confessional. His what he likes to call calculus is based off of me not having 2 idols. So in my game, it would make absolutely no sense to get rid of Jackson at 6 and then presumably Matthew at 5, and then I'm stranded at 4 needing to win a challenge, right? Which is kind of what my calculus was, but just getting to 4 with 2 idols and needing to win a challenge. Because at this point, I knew I was playing the idols anyways. I wasn't going to go out with the idols in my pocket. I was like, that will put a target, the most infinite target on my back. This guy found 2 idols, played 2 idols. We whether they thought maybe Jackson was a bigger threat at that point or Matthew, I'm just going to skip the line. So I'm going to have to win the challenge at 4 anyways. So who can I beat more at 4? But Jackson doesn't know I'm thinking about this, right? So in the information he had, if you are believe in game theory, it makes no sense for me to flop on him. So I understand why he wouldn't go to Nate and try to come up with this crazy plan.
Sure.
The way that the vote happened was fairly interesting. So Jackson told me about the steal vote and the plan to get out Shannon super early in the week, if not immediately after pretty much the Ivy vote.
Sure.
So the scene that you see with me and Shannon in the room, and she kind of brings up Jackson, and I said no, it's going to be Matthew this week. I think it's Matthew. I had already known about the plan to get Shannon at that point,
right.
But I didn't want to share it with her because at that, maybe getting Shannon is a better play. And I think you see it in my hero versus villain pathway. I was a little conflicted on what actually made better sense in the game. So I don't share with her. I just tell her it's Matthew. I go back. I have this whole internal dilemma on which pathway is better. Obviously choose the hero side. I actually have more characters. There was a scene where I dressed up as a hero, a superhero, and as a villain, and kind of went back and forth on who to vote for. But nonetheless, so I decided Jackson was the right play about midweek. But again, fundamentally believe you have to make your moves at the very last minute. I wasn't going to go to Matthew midweek. I wasn't going to go to Shannon because at that point, things could shit could hit the fan by the time the vote gets there. And then maybe Jackson does make the move with Nate and vote someone out. I knew I was playing an idol, so I wasn't really scared, but I also really, really wanted Jackson out. So I never feared that I was going to go home, but I really wanted Jackson home. So I knew I couldn't do it the day of Tribal because Jackson had already told me his plan was on the day of Tribal to go to both Matthew and Shannon and tell them the exact same plan, but opposite names.
Right.
So he was going to go to Shannon and say, it's Matthew, I'm going to steal Nate's vote. He's going to go to Matthew and say, it's Shannon, I'm going to steal Nate's vote, which is actually the true move. But he was doing that the day of Tribal. So it's I got to do it the day before Tribal. I don't want to leave any more time in between it. Mm-hmm. But the day before Tribal was the biggest tailgate day of the year for the NBA class, right? So then I was like, shit, do I do it one day before that? So my decision matrix became, do a move too early or do a move super fucking drunk. So I was super fucking drunk. Let's go. Drunk Dale is still greater than sober Jackson. I could still pull it off.
I don't know if you're on Twitter, but that's absolutely what I'm going to get a tweet about from Jackson on that one.
For sure.
Thanks very much.
So I knew I had to go to Matthew first because I want to hit, if for some reason, Shannon's buy-in is easy, right?
Yes.
Hey, he's coming for you. Do you want to vote for him? Okay, her buy-in is a lot easier. I thought Matthew's buy-in would actually be a lot more difficult because if Jackson's gone, that's actually worse for his game. Now you don't have another shield. And at that point, people still perceived Matthew as a big threat. They knew he wasn't really playing, but he was, he could still be a returnee. So he wanted to keep threats around. So I had to convince Matthew to take out Shannon. And that's when I'm sharing with him, hey, Shannon wants Jackson gone. here's what, and I like specifically told him, here's what Jackson's going to do. Because Jackson hadn't told Matthew about the steal vote yet either. He's like, he hasn't told me about the steal the vote, and he's told you. I'm like, yeah, Jackson's way closer with me. But don't think any ideas to get rid of me because here's my idol. So let's put all the emphasis on Jackson. So that's kind of the point of sharing the aisles. So he doesn't come back and say, well, screw getting rid of Jackson. Let's just get rid of Dale. Like, no, the target's on Jackson. So he got by him pretty quickly. I went back to the bus, took a few more bear bongs, and then I went to talk to Shannon, which at that point, like, I'm absolutely just shit canned. That conversation was actually, like, God bless Shannon. That conversation was like close to 2 hours. Like, you guys
I have to say, like, they edited. It was still rough for me to watch, and it was like edited down. I can't imagine being Shannon in that moment.
No, it was like I said, she's an angel for even putting up with me all season, but specifically in that, I was like yelling at her like roommate. I was like, "Fuck you, man!" Just like stupid stuff. I don't even know why. So
Oh, no.
It was a messy conversation, but that's when I actually revealed to Shannon about like, hey, it's not Matthew, it's you. But I'm on board of getting Jackson. At that point, I already knew she wanted to get rid of Jackson. So let's do Jackson. By the way, here's what Jackson is going to do. He's going to come to you and tell you about this steal a vote plan. And like, sure enough, you guys see it in the show, which is like hilarious because Jackson thinks he's like being so clever, telling her this plan that's like meant for her, but actually for someone else. And he's like, she'll never know. But she actually knows about that exact plan, and she's reacting to it like it's the first time she's here. She's like, oh my God, you do? Okay, great. But they're both just clearly lying to each other, and she already knows about this plan that he's trying to gun for her, and he's gunning for her, telling her some like crazy twisted move. And that was really fun to watch for me because of knowing what they both knew at that point. But yeah, so it happened the day before Tribal, and then the day of Tribal, Jackson does his whole thing, shits on Nate, doesn't even tell him where to vote, and then lo and behold, the Jackson move happens. Yeah.
Poor Nate. And just to talk about, I think, Nate a little bit, what would you have done if Nate had won the Final Five immunity, right? If you are not immune, if you don't know George anymore, and somehow Nate pulls it out of thin air, what is that scenario like for you?
I mean,
you're probably gonna vote.
Yeah, I'm playing the idol for myself no matter what. Yeah. Like I had told myself during this game, like I'm never taking like a 50-50 shot. Like, all right, Matthew, it's either me or you. Let's guess this thing correctly. Like if I have an instinct that they're going to put it on you, I'll play it for you. Like I don't care. Like I'm just going to survive one more week and go to the next week. So I was playing the idol on myself no matter what. So I would have been at Final Four in probably similar situation. At that point, we probably take out Matthew.
Yeah, you probably vote for Matthew.
Because Shannon and Kat are voting together no matter what. So then what are we going to force a 2-2 tie? Like didn't make a lot of sense.
And that actually brings me to like just the idea of Kat and the role that Kat plays in the season, because she basically is like a backup for Shannon in a lot of ways, but you have Shannon. So I'm wondering if there was ever a point where you thought maybe I should vote out Kat, and then it was like Kat is so clearly in with Shannon and Shannon's in with me that it makes zero sense for me to eliminate Kat. I'm wondering when that kind of hit you playing the game.
Probably like after the Ivy vote.
Yeah.
It's like Kat clearly flipped. I had not talked to Kat that week at all. I had only talked to Shannon and Jackson and obviously Matthew. But I had not talked to Kat that week at all. And she voted with me. And like I did zero. So I'm like, she is very much so in with Shannon. But I felt like Shannon had a closer relationship with me than she did with Kat. I think like, and I know like this is my perspective, right? I'm not saying this to be true, but at the beginning of the game, Shannon and Kat didn't really like vibe as you see in the edit. So I thought like for Shannon, Kat's relationship was more like strategic. Like I have this free vote. I'm controlling 2 of the votes. So that makes more sense, but not more of like a relationship on relationship level. So to me, I was like, me and Shannon are really good. Shannon has this extra vote. So now I kind of have 2 votes in a sense. I have Shannon's vote and Kat's vote. So why would I want to get rid of it? Like you said. And then the second point was if you put Kat on the jury, like no matter what, she's voting for Shannon.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't give a shit. Like who, like she's not a purist in the game. She's not going to vote like who played the best game. She's going to like vote who you like the most. So I didn't want to put Kat on the jury because had I ended up there with Shannon, which is who I wanted to go to the end with, that would be a vote for Shannon. I gone with 2 other people, I think I get Kat's vote because I think she even says in the season, like, if it's not you, I'd like it to be Dale. But yeah, I didn't want her on the jury. So I really wanted to keep Kat at the end so she wasn't a jury vote for someone else.
Right. And I think that this brings up like this whole really interesting idea of for season 3, what happens, right, is that Dylan gets taken by Devin, but Devin cuts Aaron. And I think that you are almost in a reverse where you know that you're taking Shannon and she is your close ally. And had you betrayed Shannon, I feel like Shannon would have been upset. She might have voted for you. But this is all to say that, like, you keeping Shannon and Kat in the game kind of ensures your win in a lot of ways. And it's really interesting where Shannon is the contender, where if you're not there, it's Shannon. And
right.
It's a really fascinating look at, like, having a good understanding of who you do beat in the end and exactly why, where you can take somebody who gets as many votes as she does because Shannon played a great game and still beat her. I think is a real good testament to, like, knowing the situation that you're in and knowing the entire jury and maybe who is valuing what gameplay. So I think that was a really good observation on your part. And also I feel like when people are like, oh, the season's rigged, it's like, well, yeah, I think everybody knew exactly what was going on as well. Like, it's,
I say, to be fair to Shannon, like, I don't think I took her to the end, right? Like, she certainly played her own game. And she physically and literally took me to the end with her vote.
She did.
So, like, but yeah, understood. Point taken.
That's a good way of phrasing it. Yes. Like, you going with Shannon and sort of making this promise, I should say. Right. And so I want to know, let's see. Who was surprising to see in the edit? In, like, watching the season back, getting to see everybody talk about you, talk about the game in general, who maybe was, like, a standout to you that you didn't expect?
I mean, you're going to hear this, like, repeated over and over again. It's Shannon, right? Like, her. And I think I probably saw a little bit more, like, of true Shannon than other players did, just, like, through our relationship. But like, in the game itself, Shannon was, like, much more reserved, like, very cool-headed, like, not very outspoken, like, certainly involved in the conversation, but not, like, really as charismatic, I would say, as, like, she works it up in the confessionals. And I think, to be honest, that was, like, somewhat of a detriment to her game because, like, perception kind of becomes reality, right? Whether it's true or not. Like, in your confessionals, you see how hard she's actually gaming. And that's why the viewers are like, Shannon could win this. Like, Shannon is a great player because in her confessionals, she's, like, expressing how much she's gaming. But in those conversations with, like, all the other game players or even one-on-one, there wasn't a lot of, like, gameplay expression, right? It was more of, like I said, this more cool, level-headed person. So she certainly surprised me. Nate's fucking hatred towards me just blows my mind. Like, you could hate me. That's what I said. Like, if I, like, did something to someone, like, I have plenty of haters. Don't get me wrong. Like, I breathe and live off the haters. I don't fucking dress up as a cowboy not to understand that I'm going to have haters. But Nate, like, we had met only a handful of times. And when we did, it was very, like, cordial and very inviting and trying to, you know, make it work with him. And didn't think anything I had said in those conversations warranted, like, such hatred. Maybe just, like, the ethos of me just existing and being this old guy playing, like, stemmed from it. But I just didn't know, like, where that pure hatred stemmed from. But we'll take it.
Nate's facial expressions are my favorite, are one of my favorite things of this season. Where, like, just like the "Hello Darkness, my old friend" edits Ian puts over them, fucking killed me. I also think that Shannon. Whereas you used a lot of your confessionals just, like, you know, whiteboard it out and talk about it, Shannon's using them for, like, therapy almost. We're like, I'm just going to scream at the camera about Jackson and losing Jack and all this stuff for, like, 5 hours, and then I'm going to move on with my life. I kind of love that about Shannon. I can't wait. Shannon and I are going to have a conversation on Sunday afternoon, so stay tuned for that if, know, if you're listening.
I think another one actually...
Say that.
I was gonna say another person, last person before we move on to the next was Megan. Also surprised, I think, a lot of people quite a bit. Like, we didn't, like, no offense to Megan, we didn't view her as really much of a game player. She just seemed like this, like, very sweet, quiet, like, innocent person, like, not willing to hurt a fly. Actually, her big flaw, she cannot lie to anyone.
No,
like, she physically couldn't lie. You just, like, Jackson would be like, Megan, what's going on? What? And like Megan will tell her, like, I would even be like, Megan, what's going on? And she'd be like start smiling. So you could get a good read off of her. So, but we never like really saw her as like a big game player. But then when you watch it back and you see how involved she was and how much like strategy she was actually doing, those are just things that you don't see in your conversation. So that was also kudos to her.
Yeah.
As well.
Awesome. Yeah. And so Shannon interview on Sunday, Jackson and Matthew will talk smack about you there too. So if you want to tune in. So I want to know just in general, like, what are some of your favorite memories or experiences or moments from the game? Like, is it, and then, okay, we'll talk about your favorite memories and then we'll talk about the diaper. So I just want to make sure we do not forget to talk about the diaper, but favorite memories, moments, experiences.
I think the rites of passage was definitely up there.
Yeah.
I really had fun with that. I was a bit disappointed. So I made my own rites of passage and I did it myself. And then I invited all of the other cast members to come back and do it, but they didn't know about my own version. And like in my own version, I was like just shitting on people, trying to like almost play up the villain card, and was just like, oh, Eliza, poor thing, sayonara, like shit like that. And then like you see me like in the actual Lisa thing, I'm like, you were such a good player, like you got my book because of respect. You know, I would never, couldn't bring you in. And I was hoping they would do like, I was hoping they almost do an overlay of like side by side, like smell ya, and then like me like being so sympathetic. So that was really fun.
Really needs to be released as like a secret scene. I think if anything, this season probably has like the best secret scenes that are available to be like viewed again later. That feels like Ian and Cooper need to post that, please.
Yeah, so that was really fun. In Final Four, I started having a lot of fun with this like third idol mystery, and I think no one really bought into it, but I was just like trying to like play up the fact that there could be a third idol out there and that I may or may not have it, because at this point I already pulled out two. And in my conversation with Shannon, I was like, would you vote with me or vote for me if I had two idols, 1 hour? And I kept bringing up this third idol. She's like, why do you keep bringing up a third idol? And I was like, I don't know. So I just kept bringing up this like allure of a third idol out there. So that was fun. I think clearly the watermelon challenge. I know we didn't talk much about that, but I was really hoping. There's two challenges I was really hoping for in the season. One was an eating challenge, and one was an endurance challenge. And I didn't really get either. You can make the argument I lost the endurance challenge in the musical chairs one, but that was fucking stupid, to be honest. So yeah, I really wanted
the holding the hand above your head.
That wasn't so much endurance as it was just like strength. Like it wasn't like your will to stand out there. It was like physically like challenging. Like you saw Matthew drop to go get the clue after 10 minutes. It wasn't because he really wanted the clue. He's like, my arm was killing me. I physically I was like having like sensations tingling and whatnot. So So I fell because I couldn't hold my hand up there, not because of willpower. I wanted like an endurance, like just mind over matter type of challenge. So the watermelon was like the next closest thing that I could get to the eating challenge.
Yeah.
And I know everyone's skeptical of my head smashing judo chop, but it had, in theory, had the best strategic decision probably of the whole season was my strategy for the watermelon, but it didn't work out as planned. But had it would have been great because no one else on the North Campus nerds were smashing a watermelon with their hands or heads. So the rule was you had to bring the smaller piece. So if you break off a piece, you could only bring the smaller piece. So if you like bit it, if you only bit like a quarter, like this big of a piece, you couldn't then just bring the huge chunk. You had to bring the smaller piece.
Okay.
So I was like, smash this thing into smithereens. There would probably be like 4 or 5 big pieces. And then we could just take one by one, each tribe member of the team taking the big pieces because now they have already been broken. So I was trying to smash it into a bunch of little pieces and feed my tribe like mama bird, flick it over. So that didn't work out because the watermelons were face up, like with the flesh facing you at first. And like, how are you going to smash something that's rounded this way? You have to put it like this way and then smash from here so it buckles, right? So I'm smashing the flesh side and like a few smashes in. I'm like, oh, fuck, what am I doing? Everything's squirting in me, going up like a crevice. This isn't working. So I actually flipped it around and flipped it the other side. So it was a little hollow. And now the hollow side was like on the table. And I thought if I gave it one good smash, that would buckle. But what happened was the table was already so slippery at that point from all the juices that I had splashed out that it just fucking banana peeled right off the table, and I didn't get a good side, and I actually hit like just the like a quarter watermelon, not like the halfway point, and I ended up just hitting my head on the table. So gave up on that strategy, but it was good in theory. But I reverted to the next best thing. One, I was physically biting pieces and spitting out on the table for other members to take, and I like didn't think much of it at that point. But I'm like, take those pieces, take those pieces. I'm like yelling at everyone. I'm like, that's kind of gross. They're taking
It's
shit
so
that I'm
gross.
spitting out. But I was like so into it. Elisa's like looking at me. I'm like, take the piece. So that was fun.
Meanwhile, Elisa like kind of has mono. She told us like, oh
Right.
my god.
But then I was like, the rind was so light. Like everyone was trying to get the green part because it's like solid, right? And it's like, oh, solid's gonna be so. The rind was actually really light, like a rind of a watermelon. It's like almost spongy. It's kind of like just full of air. So I just start suckling down the water of the watermelon. I was like, and like trying to like suck in the watermelon because water has density. Like you know, everyone's weight is water weight, right? So I'm like swallowing water from the watermelon, and then when I got back to the bucket, I was regurgitating water so I could hold more in my mouth. So I was like, and I'm like puking just like a little bit of the flesh, but mostly just water, just like throwing up water into the bucket. So that was then became my strategy, and we smoked them. We had 18 pounds versus 12 pounds. So
and while you're doing this, you're also getting to spend time with fan favorite game changer Eric Reichenbach.
That's right. So that was so much fun. That was a good time.
Yeah. And okay, the diaper. Let's talk about it. Challenge preparedness. First of all, I really enjoyed this Final Four challenge. I'm sure that you were a little bummed that it wasn't endurance, but did you like the challenge if you maybe weren't wearing a diaper and chafing all the time?
No. So here's what my biggest grief with the challenge was. Like the fact that it wasn't endurance, I could get over that. Like they're trying to incorporate something new into the season. And I think that was pretty evident because throughout the season, we were all expecting like steal the bacon. We were expecting a challenge where like you vote like most likely or like most liked, most trusting, whatever you call that game, where you like physically like
touchy subjects.
Touchy subject. That was, I think, in season 1, 2, and 3. I think steal the bacon was in season 1, 2, and 3. We didn't get either of those challenges, and we're like, why are they? In production was like, we're trying new challenges this year. We're trying to make it entertaining. So like, okay, understandable. They're not doing it endurance, even though the previous 3 seasons they had done endurance. So I was a little upset about that. What pissed me off the most was production had claimed that because at this point Tokidoki just had shat on production for weeks on end about how like they weren't doing anything correctly, and like, do you test these challenges out yourself? Like, of course, we have essentially like pilot dummies that do these challenges and make sure that they're doable. Because we were confused about the riddles and the 1 week for the musical chairs. No one got any, like not one riddle. It's like, did you guys test these out with college players and see if these were feasible? Like, what do you like? Yeah, we got them in like 2 minutes. So when I get to the inflection point of the puzzle of naming 15 colleges at Michigan or doing the physical part, like I go straight to my head and I say, they must have tested this out, and it's got to be about equivalent. They probably had 3 people do the puzzle, 3 people do the running or whatever, timed it, and it's like on average these both add up to about 20 minutes. So whether you do this, as long as you don't kill yourself or like completely brain fart on the puzzle, they're going to take about the same. Turns out, like behind the scenes, breaking the fourth wall or whatever it's called, they didn't test the physical part of that running the track and doing the bear crawl and doing the crab walk. They only tested the puzzles. So they had no clue how long that was going to take. It sincerely would have taken about an hour and a half to 2 hours to complete. It was that challenging.
Yeah, I feel like I cheated in the mile in high school, you know, like that 4 laps is a mile, right? So you're basically doing 3 times 3, 3 plus 3 plus 3. So you're doing 9. So you're doing 2 miles of running.
No, not running.
Or
you're only
like
doing
running. Yes.
Crab walking. Like let's just do the math here. How long does it take to walk a mile? About 20 minutes.
Right.
Yeah, you know,
run a mile, maybe 10 if you're good at it. Like,
but so walking a mile is going to take about 20 minutes. All right. Now, how long does it take to crab walk a mile? Because it was, 3/4 of a mile, but just we'll do 3/4 of it. If it takes 20 minutes to walk a mile, probably taking what, 3x to crab walk? You can't really crab walk as fast. And then not only
and then
that,
also that shit hurts your hands because you're on like the track, and that really fucking hurts at a.
And you're on your track for the bear walk as well.
Right.
So you're on the track for 3 laps on the bear walk and on your hands for 3 walks for the crab walk. So that's 6 laps. That's 1.5 miles on your hands, both forward and backward. So that's going to take at least an hour to complete. And then what can you run a mile in 10 minutes? So an hour and 10 minutes, if not more. The puzzle took them, like I was on my half of my bear walk one and they were done. So it probably took me if it takes 10 minutes to run a mile, to run 3/4 of a mile, maybe I finished in 8 minutes. And then I was like on halfway through my bear crawl. So maybe that was another 5 minutes or so. So I was about 13 minutes in and they were all 3 of them I had already finished with that puzzle. So I'm like, there's no way I fucking do this. So I got on the puzzle, but I don't know shit about colleges. I was literally in the business school the whole time. So I'm like guessing like the College of Fashion. And they're like, there's no College of Fashion here, sir. I'm like, fuck. So I was really upset about that because I'm like, why would you like make the puzzle either more challenging or make the physical thing more comparable? So that annoyed me.
Well, and I think that physical thing can easily be reduced to like one lap of each style, and it's easy. But that's also like, I think a good example of like why you test out challenges with other people beforehand. I always prefer to keep challenges shorter in Survivor in general, but it's good to know. I have to give kudos for like, I know Kevin and Duck and Will and everybody like were trying out new challenges and bringing things to College Survivor that we've never seen before. But that sounded like a nightmare. I remember I saw that and I was like, I wouldn't die. I would die if I had to bear walk 3 laps around a track. Like,
right. But to answer your original question, I was devastated that I didn't get to shit my pants. I was fully ready to fucking drop a dookie and like, maybe even like show it and like put it in my hand just to fuck with people. But
oh God. Well, the smell alone, I feel like this is going to be so disgusting. But like, so I've been at some alt comedy shows, and some people have done that, and it was one of the worst experiences of my life. And it smells so bad. As an adult human does that, it smells. So you definitely would have gotten them to vacate the vicinity just by that happening alone.
Coming at them from all angles. You got like the physical sensation of the smell, and then you get the fucking mental fuck of like, this guy just shat his pants and is sitting here. Like, he'll be here all night. So I was a little Piper Dale. What's up, Josh? My man. So I was a little disappointed about that. But also I think Jackson has like run his mouth that he would have won the endurance challenge, like hands down, no matter what. He's absolutely full of shit. There's no chance under the sun that he would have won. Like I would have. Like, here was the thing. Also, that was during finals, and at that point, I had no classes. I had already did my 2.5 credit hours or whatever I had left, so I had nothing. So I would have stayed there for a week, and I had a wife that was going to deliver me meals. So like, good luck, dude. You don't have a girlfriend, and you don't have like you have finals. Like, get the fuck out of here. So I was like convinced, and Jackson claims that he would win. The other thing was like back in high school, there was like I was a wrestler, almost like went to college to wrestle. So I used to like sit in the sauna for like hours on the end, riding a bike to lose weight before like the night of a competition, and like sleeping in garbage bags. So like mental fortitude and like strength has always been like kind of my like defining skill. Like if someone says like, what's your strong skill? I actually say like mental, like strength. So he thinks that he would, no chance. What was I going to say? Oh, last point to this. Like a year later, I came back to campus for a football game, and I met up with some of the Survivor people. And now I had like pride because Jackson was like kind of like, no, I would have beat you. I would have beat you. All right, let's go stand on this pole.
I was going to say, we could have hosted a rematch live here, but I'm glad to hear it happened.
No money on the line, nothing on the line other than just pure pride. Let's go stand on this pole and see who's willing to stand out here. And he wouldn't do it. And I was already on the pole ready to go. So
Jackson, this is a direct call out.
For sure.
This needs to be rectified. I love that it's like, if you want to win College Survivor, get a wife. That'll do it. There's your ticket. Oh my God. What would your ideal endurance challenge have been? Is it the hand? Is it the holding onto the pole? Is it like the Survivor Maryland, like put your hand on the statue and don't move? Like, what is that for you?
Yeah, so I'm not too privy to Survivor Maryland, but I will say just like essentially like don't move from the statue, whether it's putting your hand on something. In Survivor Michigan, I think they walk around, which is effectively putting your hand on something, but also having to get a
Oh
little
yeah, the
tired
spinning
by
of the
walking.
cube. Yes.
But I just thought it was going to be purely, putting your hand or like standing on a platform, but like with like enough space where you could at least stand and you don't have to like worry about maybe slipping up, but like you can't really stretch out that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, something where it's just like mind over matter. Like if you're willing to stand here for days, you will win. Like who wants it? Essentially, who wants this the most?
Mm-hmm. I think Jackson, you got to put up or shut up. I feel like that's just the
What I said. That's what I said.
Let's see. I'm just going through my nice list. Oh, if you go okay, for two things. One, if you go home at Final Four, do you vote for Shannon to win? Is my question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see it in my confessionals that I even say like if I don't win, I want Shannon to win. So most likely I do. But it's always tough to say like without it happening because like
right.
I am like a pretty salty person sometimes. So like I like to believe like my pure Survivor like love for the game, wanting to vote for the best player, probably still vote for Shannon. But at that point, I like not enough people give Matthew credit for nearly making it to Final Three as a returning player. Like I don't care that he was a fucking GOAT. You were a returning player and it made it to the end. And I maybe overappreciated the fact, but like in my mind, oh my God, my name just changed to Danger Dale. That's incredible.
Oh, I did that a while ago.
I just noticed. But in my mind, like if a returning player making it to the end, no matter what, deserves credit. I don't care how you got there. It deserves, like it warrants credit. So like I would have not put it past me to consider voting for Matthew. Like I certainly wouldn't. So I wasn't going to vote for Kat. So it was going to be between Shannon
I was going to say, you're telling me, you know, Kat might have a chance. No, I understand completely. I think that Shannon and Matthew both had really sort of commendable moments to their game, and I think you can see that's why Shannon is so paranoid about losing to Matthew, and I think that is a testament to like Matthew did have some opportunity and some potential. And the other question I had for you was, if it was a final two like season 3 had been, and you had to let's say you win immunity, do you vote out Kat and take Shannon, or do you try and vote out Shannon to solidify the win and take Kat?
I probably take Shannon. I mean, again, to be fair, and this is my like own arrogance, but I fundamentally thought whoever I went to the finals with, I was going to beat at the end.
Sure.
Like the game I had built around me, and then kind of the idol plays. And I thought I was going to actually use the idols a little more craftily, like, have to idol someone out. But then it turned out I didn't even need to do that. So, which was like almost even a bit better testament. But I thought that whoever I go against, I would beat at the end. So actually, if I would have won at Final Four, I like seriously and honestly was considering bringing Matthew and Shannon because I just liked them both the most, and I knew how much they both cared about the game. And like Kat hadn't really expressed interest in wanting to be in Final Three, and like I'm again always want to reward the players that are like playing the best and like truly care about it. And I didn't think by bringing Matthew I would lose any votes. So I think in a Final Two I still bring Shannon just because like. One, I just liked her. Like she was like literally my little sister in the game. Still is like a little sister relationship. So I wouldn't want to like put any detriment to that relationship, but also just because I want to reward the players that cared about the game the most.
And but I guess finally, like, did you have fun? And would you ever play Fake Survivor again? Whether it's, I don't know if you're going to go to like another grad school, but you know, would you ever play Fake Survivor again? Did you have a good time?
I had an amazing fucking time. Like it was unbelievable. Wouldn't change a thing. I think if you guys can't tell, like I love this shit, right? Like I'm on podcast 2 years later as a 31-year-old just because of how much I appreciate and how much fun. And kudos to like the production team and everyone like outside of the cast because they really put in endless hours to make all this happen. And also the fans like you guys like have really no affiliation to Michigan Survivor, but keep it alive and make it fun for us cast members to kind of watch it after the fact and see people's opinions. But to answer your question, would 100% play again? I don't think I would be able to play like a semester long game. Like I just don't have time anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like I understand now how much time it truly takes. Like a mini type of thing, like a weekend, that would make more sense. But a long series, there's no chance. My goal is actually to just get on the real show. So I'm in the works for audition tape number 3. I'll have to actually, have I sent you my audition, the link to my first audition tape?
No.
I gotta send it to you.
Okay, I'm in. I'll pass it along to the one person I know in well, he's not in casting anymore, so good luck.
Oh, I was just sharing for your own enjoyment.
I know.
I had almost got cast on the show when I was like 23.
Really?
With this audition tape. Yeah, that's what I was gonna send. So it was
I see. Old school. What season would that have been? Do you know?
I think I applied for season like 31. It was either like 30 and 31 or 30. They you apply for 2 seasons when you apply. Yeah. So it was like for 30 or 31 or 31 or 32. But
wow.
Yeah, the tape was amazing. I had got a call back, did like a round 1 interview. Then they send you the actual paper application, filled out the paper application, had another interview. Then after that, I had like a 3rd call with 2 people via Zoom, and like they got to see me. And then at that process, there was, we want to see Dale and CBS Survivors. Hell yeah,
Josh
we do.
is not wrong.
At that point, they're like, the next step in the process is flying you out to LA. We typically fly out, I think they said like 100 people.
Yeah.
And then like out of the 100, they whittle it down to, I think, maybe 30. And then out of that 30, they select. So I was like the step away from getting out to LA. So I was pretty bummed, but I'm working on putting together a new audition tape now that I have Michigan Survivor under my belt, and hopefully
I'm excited for you. I think that'll be great. It's so funny that like you straight up before Survivor Michigan, you were just straight up almost on Real Survivor is hilarious. But you should definitely play a weekend game. I feel like people feel very blessed to play with the Survivor Michigan winner, but also I think in general, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of what you're talking about save the strategy for the last second and then make a vote happen. And I'm sure people would want to see more Danger Dale confessionals, even if you don't have the full outfit with you. I feel like they would be interested to.
Oh, I'm flying on the plane in this thing. No doubt. No doubt.
Flying to LA in the Danger Dale outfit, showing up, hey, Jeff Probst, what's going on? Like, I feel like that would be a serve. You just show up there and say, hey, how's it going?
I'm not too plugged into the live reality game community, but keep me posted. Maybe I'll try to join one. Don't you run one, right? The New York one?
Yeah. I help with New York, Miss Emily Paddock and Sarah Gallagher on the season right now, which people should watch. But whatever floats your boat. I think, Dale, is there anything else we haven't talked about? Because I want to make sure that we get to everything that you might want to say before we, conclude.
I mean, we've done a fairly thorough debrief.
Yes.
I think, like, let's see. Not really. I just said one thing I like to say is like luck is definitely involved in the game as well. Like there is many points throughout the game in which had they not gone my way out of like just pure chance, I don't win. But at the time I kind of had overlooked those scenarios. So like for instance, I was very like dead set on new El Norte throwing the challenge. And when they did, and when Nate wins that puzzle, I was like so upset. I'm so like freaking pissed. I'm like, God, this screws up my whole game. That was like the biggest blessing in the game, right?
Sure.
Because then that led to the Eliza vote, and that just put me up into like a very clear position to win the game. And I don't think if that doesn't happen, I think there's a ton of dynamics that changes. The other example is the coin flip, right? If Matthew loses that, Matthew goes home that week. I'm fairly convinced.
Coin flip boy, yeah.
And then, coin flip boy. And then if Matthew goes home that week, now I'm in a way worse position than I was when Ivy going home that week. But like at that point in the game, I was like really convinced on Matthew going home, and out of pure luck, he wins a coin flip, and then things change. So just want to give a shout out to just luck and being able to take advantage of that, and also like all the other players and how much fun it was. And if I offended anyone on this, I apologize. Like everyone knows that I love them and it's a lot of fun.
Sure.
Except for Nate. No, I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, except for Jackson, how dare you lose that coin flip? Like, just keep berating him 2 years later, how it is. Dale, thank you for joining me. I know you also did the Survivor Analyst podcast, right? 4 hours?
I did. Yeah. Shout out Josh.
Yes.
Josh and
Hi,
Dustin.
Josh.
I also love Dustin, but he's not commenting in this, so
Right.
he's probably sleeping right now. He's got an early bedtime.
Exactly. So check that out. And they've been covering Survivor Michigan as well. Talked to a lot of people. I know they just had a Shannon episode. I'm going to talk to Shannon Sunday at around 3 or 4 p.m. I forget what I wrote in my calendar. So if you have questions, you can send them to me or you can ask them live. Other than that, I might be hanging out with Cooper and Ian this weekend. So it's going to be a party in New York City. And Dale, I hope you have a great night. Thank you for joining me.
Stay in touch, of course.
Keep it swaggy.